Hi, Sharon here from Resonance. From September 2019 to February 2020, the Resonance Roadshow visited colleges around the UK delivering workshops about the music industry. As well as musical performances and masterclasses, the Roadshow featured a Q&A session where students had the opportunity to ask the band questions on a wide range of subjects. These included describing their different routes into the music industry, general musicianship, experiences of touring and studio work, and managing their very different portfolio careers. In this video, we've selected the most frequently asked questions to put to our team. How do you overcome or cope with stage fright and nerves?
Two things that really help me is one, learn the lyrics, the song, whatever it is, whatever you're performing, learn it to the point where you can forget it and it will still happen, if that makes sense. So what I do is I learn it so much that it's in my muscle memory. When I'm about to go on stage, I have that mental space to cope with my emotions and my nerves. If you have only just learnt the lyrics and you're having to think of them in order to perform them, then you've got no mental space left to calm yourself down and to, tell yourself everything's fine, everything's going to be okay. And my second piece of advice, practice mindful meditation and being present as much as I can. And for me, if I can bring myself into the moment, then if I'm truly present and truly in the now, then my nerves are 90% less because I'm not thinking about what's about to happen or what could go wrong or, will people like me? What if people laugh at me? There's no room for that because those are all thoughts of the future, not the present.
Best way of overcoming stage fright for me personally is preparation. Just making sure that I've got everything in my head, that I don't have to rely on anything else, that I'm not second guessing myself, and that's all in the preparation and the rehearsal time really. Just going through my own personal practice and just double checking everything and getting everything in my head. So definitely preparation.
What pedals would you recommend for someone starting out?
For someone starting out getting into the world of effects, which is important in this industry, I would recommend a multi-effects unit to start off with, as that will show you what each effect is called, what it does, and usually give you a few parameters within that to play with so you can understand it. That's a great place to start for anyone. A multi-effects unit can look something like this. So you've got all the effects going across in one box, but a very good industry standard brand is Boss, and they for guitar offer the Boss GT1 or for bass the GT1B. Great starting points and probably the best place for you to get some solid sounds so you can understand it.
When I was 16, there was two pedals that I bought that have remained on my pedal board ever since. There's been numerous different kind of pedals that I've had since that, but these two are the ones that I started off with, and in their generic form I've always had them on my board. The first one is a guitar tuner, which keeps my guitar in tune. Does what it says in the tin, but probably the most important pedal on my board. Secondly is an overdrive pedal, and this was the first one that I ever bought. I still use this one today. It's a fantastic pedal. And the actual thing to do with an overdrive pedal is that they are so usable in every different style of music. So really worth getting something of this nature.
How much does it cost to tour?
Costs for a touring band will of course vary depending on their popularity and profile. Every show will involve transport of some kind, and this can be anything from the band's own vehicles and the cost of running those to hiring vehicles like vans, splitters and tour buses, which can cost anything from £50 to £1,500 per day. Band and crew also need to be fed and watered and have a bed for the night, and I know some band members have slept in their own vehicles, which of course is free, but hotels can cost anything from £40 per room per night, and they can sleep 3 or 4 people sometimes, till the sky's the limit. Food? Even if you take your own food, it still costs money, and you will need water and other refreshments like beer and a bottle of Jack Daniels. But that could be on the rider. Then before a tour, a band will rehearse, and they'll need to look after and repair and maintain their equipment. So the list of costs goes on, and all these preparatory expenses should be considered a tour expense. Of course, band members would like to put some money into their own pockets, so to subsidise the show it is important to consider having some kind of merchandise available to sell at these shows, like CDs, t-shirts, badges, caps, etc. And in many cases on long tours, the profits from this merchandise funds many of the expenses.
If you could go back in time and tell yourself one thing at the start of your career that you have learned that has helped you, what would it be?
I would say don't be afraid of trying new things. You may, and I've come across this before, people just putting themselves into one bracket saying I'm this kind of musician or anything, and they won't look at anything else. If you do that or see yourself above certain things, you'll miss out on so many opportunities that could then lead to stuff that you actually want to do. So basically just don't turn your nose up or turn away gigs because you think you're above them. But also on the flip side of that, don't think gigs are too above you. You know, if you do see an application for something, if you think you've got what it takes to do it, then put yourself forward, because the worst they can say is no, but at least you've got your name in with those kind of people.
I would suggest that planning ahead is a really, really important thing to be able to do, because you know the nature of a musician's life is that it peaks and troughs, and if you don't sort of plan ahead and have some kind of something set in reserve for those fallow periods of time, you're going to wind up in trouble pretty quickly. You're going to have to go out and get a regular job. Nobody wants that, do they? And another thing is sort of good diary management, especially when starting out. I see so many young folk sort of saying yes to everything, and of course, you know, in their minds they're thinking, right, I've got to say yes, I've got to do this, I've got to do that and the other, otherwise you know, I'm not going to end up being ahead. But sometimes those people cause problems for themselves by double booking. You know, double booking is one of the worst things that you can do as a not just as a musician, but as any kind of self-employed person, because you find yourself in a position where you have to let somebody down, and that is never a good position to be in. And it only takes a few of those instances for you to kind of get a reputation for being unreliable. Being unreliable is not something you want to have associated with your name.
If I was to go back now and give myself a little bit of a tip as I was starting out, it would be to grab every opportunity available to me to learn something from the people that I was working with. One thing that's become very apparent to me over my career is the more flexible you are, the more skills that you've got, the more employable you become. So working with great front house engineers, studio producers, monitor engineers, technicians and musicians has given me countless opportunities to kind of upskill myself from a playing point of view, with new techniques, new styles of playing, to learning new software, to understanding how equipment works. So many different things, and hopefully they've sort of helped me have quite a rounded career within the music industry.
What is the hardest part of the job? Is it more taxing mentally or physically?
So this job's more taxing mentally due to various aspects, not only just what's obviously going on in your own head, but dealing with so many different aspects within this job of pay, problem solving, people skills. There's all sorts of things, but the main way of coping with that is being prepared and being ready in advance. So if you're doing a lot of function gigs, learn the most popular function tunes at the time, and they'll usually come up quite frequently, so that makes it a lot easier. It takes the pressure off. It's just being proactive. So if you know you have a particular weakness in your knowledge or in your playing, work on that, and that way at least you can be a little bit prepared and not have to stress so much when the right gig comes along.
This one's a tricky one. I'm going to say that it's a 50-50 split. So mentally challenging because you can set out for a gig 12 to 14 hours before you actually end up playing the gig. So mentally there's a lot of waiting, a lot of thinking over things, back to second guessing yourself on certain things. But then being as I'm a drummer, from a physical point of view, lifting a drum kit in and out of a venue, back into the bus or back into the van or even just off the stage is physically quite demanding, especially if you just played for 2 hours. So I'm going to say it's a 50-50 split.
How do you start session playing?
Well, session playing for me came about as a byproduct of being out on the road with a band already, because there was people that were seeing me play. So I found that I was trying to be as professional as I could on stage and as punctual and as just nice to people. I was really polite to them. People would remember this. Obviously couple that with musical ability. So then I would therefore get calls to do things. A lot of it's about making friendships with people, being kind to people, like I said, and hanging around in things like musical rehearsal facilities, going to gigs as well when you're not playing. Just immerse yourself in this musical community, and if you're interested in doing that, then like attracts like. You will come up against a situation where you may start talking to somebody and then they go, well, actually I need a guitarist for this, or I need a saxophonist or whatever, and then you get the call because they remember you because you were polite and you practiced your instrument and you sound good at it.
I can remember the first studio session I got was I was playing on a gig, and it was somebody in the audience that had been watching the gig that came and had a chat afterwards and said that they were working on some new material. They'd enjoyed the gig, they were looking for a keyboard player to put some keys down on a couple of tracks. Would I be interested? That led to obviously going across to the studio, doing some work with an engineer and a producer, and the guy who'd written the material seemed to go really well. And then a couple of weeks after that, I got a phone call from the studio that I'd done the recording in, saying they'd got another session that had come in, and there was a band looking for some keyboards being put down on some tracks. Would I be up for it? And that sort of grew and grew and grew. And the more people that you get to work with, the more your name gets put around. I think possibly what stood me in good stead was being flexible enough to play kind of different styles of music rather than being just specific to one genre of music. So that opened up quite a lot of different work for me, and quite a wide variety of playing. One thing I've learned with session work is always be open to asking questions. So in preparation for doing a session, I'll always ask whoever's sort of inviting me in for the session if they've got any reference tracks that they'd like me to have a listen to. It gives me an idea potentially of what they're looking for or what they're hoping to get out of me. And going in prepared with 2 or 3 different sort of versions of what I think they might want, but actually on the session, being flexible enough to listen to anything that they're sort of saying to me if they're trying to guide me in a different direction. So yeah, it's a lot of it is down to networking and having that flexibility in your own playing.
What is the best way to practice staying in time?
A good trick for developing your ability to play in time. I'm a bass player, so as a bass player, I think a really good thing to do is to be able to set up a rhythm track that you can play along to, sort of whether it be a 2-bar loop or a 4-bar loop or something like that. Something where the one is a real sort of focal point, and just keep working to that one, and then sort of program in some dropouts into the drum track. Drop out the drums for a bar or for 2 bars or for even for 4 bars, and see where you're landing. If you're landing on the 1 when the drums come back in, that's great. And obviously if you're ahead, you know what you need to work on. If you're behind, you know what you need to work on. So use that as a little sort of guide, and sort of see how accurately you can stay in time when the timing is not there. I think that's a bit of an old trick, but I think it's quite a good one to work on.
I'd say the best way personally of doing this is to play along to your favourite records. That's certainly what I used to do all of the time. You can play along to a metronome. I would probably put that at the bottom of the list though, personally. I'm not saying to not do it. I just think that if you practice all of the time to a metronome, then you'll obviously have great timekeeping, but you'll be very rigid, and so your feel will probably suffer slightly in terms of your playing. So if you can play along to your favourite records, some of the older records might not necessarily have been recorded to a click, so you can kind of get a sense of where the feel is in terms of going a little bit faster or a little bit slower. I'd also advocate the use of practice along to loops. I think loops are great, especially some of the new apps that you can get. So yeah.
How useful is it for solo artists to also be able to produce?
I think it gets more important as time goes on, which is very annoying because I really don't like the technical side of things. I do it, but I don't enjoy it. And it is very much going that way. I mean, how I do it is I know the basics and I know how to record my demos. If someone needs vocals for a track, I know how to record them, you know, in a way that I can then send the stems to them and they can edit them without an issue, and I know all the basics behind it. If I knew more, I could definitely provide myself with more work and I could save money, you know, when creating projects, but I really don't enjoy it, and I have to do a lot of technical stuff with my brand, video editing and graphic design and all these various things which I don't really. I enjoy the creative side of things, but I don't enjoy creating on a computer. Don't like that. I like creating with paper and pens and, you know, just a guitar and me singing. Like I really don't enjoy using technology to create. It stifles me. I don't like it. So if you're like me, then just learn the basics that you need to know, and then give the work to other people. That's what I do. But it is important, and it depends what you want to do. Now that everything's going on YouTube and you know, that's where record labels are picking people up, it's probably a lot more important than we realise.
At the time of recording this, I would go as far as to say it's absolutely essential for solo musicians and bands alike to be able to produce their own content. And that doesn't just apply to the music production as well. It's you know, video editing, it's merchandise, it's web development, it's everything that goes into creating, you know, the end product and your sort of output. Think of it this way: if you're starting out as a solo artist or a band, you're going to have a limited budget, and this is your resource for getting started. The more of the production elements that you can handle yourself, the less you have to spend with someone else doing it for you, which will lead you to have more budget left to do, you know, greater things. Not only that, but if you are looking to start a portfolio career and have a successful portfolio career, you need to be able to say yes to as many jobs as you possibly can. It'd be horrible to have to turn down a session job just because you didn't have the ability to record and export your own recordings. I don't know a session musician working in the industry today that isn't able to do everything from, you know, the composition right the way through to the export of a project, because they would have to turn down too many jobs.
What courses do you run at Resonance and how can I apply?
At present, we offer 5-degree programs at Resonance. That includes the BA in Digital Music, the BMUS in Popular Music Performance, the BA in Popular Music Performance and Production, the BSc in Popular Music Production, and the BA in Music Business. Students will also complete the Resonance Professional Diploma alongside their degree studies, which will focus on developing your softer skills and your employability. To apply for any of our degree courses, hop onto our website at www.resonance-edu.org and click the Apply Now button on the respective course page. There's no need to go through UCAS or any other agency. We are also not restricted by any UCAS deadlines, so feel free to apply anytime all the way up to the end of August.
If you have a question that you'd like to ask to one of the Resonance team, please email us at info@resonance-edu.org.
Google Resonance Education or check us out on social media. One institute, endless opportunities. Join the pioneers.